Living alone was never something that scared me. At 30 years old, I figured I had outgrown any lingering childhood fears of empty houses and shadowy corners. But fear doesn't always come from the obvious. It sneaks up on you, burrows under your skin, and takes hold before you even realize it. I lived in a split-level house, one of those older designs where the main floor held the living space, and the lower level had a second living area, a small kitchen, and a separate entrance. My sister, Lisa, technically had that lower space, but she barely stayed there. She spent most nights with her boyfriend, leaving the house eerily silent more often than not. That night, I was sprawled out on the couch in the dim glow of my television, watching a horror movie that I probably shouldn't have chosen while home alone. The open layout of my floor plan meant that behind me stretched the darkened expanse of the dining area and kitchen, empty, yet always looming just outside my line of sight. Every now and then, I found myself glancing over my shoulder, convinced that something was shifting in the darkness. Just the paranoia of being alone, I told myself. When the credits rolled, I shut everything down, brushed my teeth, and went to bed, locking the doors out of habit rather than concern. I woke up around 1 a.m. I wasn't sure why at first, but as I blinked blearily at the ceiling, I heard it, a voice. Faint, but distinct, coming from downstairs. It took my mind a moment to process what I was hearing. Then I recognized it. It was Lisa's voice. My heart slowed its frantic beats. She must have come home early. Maybe she forgot her key and needed me to let her in. But something felt off. She wasn't knocking or calling from outside. The voice was coming from inside the house. I sat up in bed, rubbing my face, still caught in the haze of sleep. I heard it again, more clearly this time. My name. Just my name, drawn out softly. Eric. It didn't sound urgent, more like a question. Like she wasn't sure if I was there. Still groggy, I swung my legs out of bed, stepping barefoot onto the cold hardwood floor. I grabbed my phone, using its glow to light my way to the hallway. The house was deathly silent now. I took the stairs slowly, each creak of the wood beneath my weight amplifying in the quiet. The darkness downstairs felt different, thicker, like the shadows had deepened since I last turned off the lights. At the bottom, I fumbled for the light switch, but my fingers met nothing but wall. The voice came again, closer this time. Eric. I felt a cold rush of adrenaline as I realized something. Lisa's voice, it was too perfect. Like a recording, playing back the same inflection, the same hesitation. I finally found the switch, flipping it up. The kitchen light buzzed to life, casting a dim yellow glow. My eyes darted around. Lisa wasn't there. The small apartment was empty. A dull thud made me jump. It came from her bedroom. I hesitated. Every logical part of me screamed to go back upstairs, lock my door, and call someone. But something compelled me forward. I crept to her bedroom, pushing the door open with a hesitant hand. The bed was neatly made. The room was exactly as she had left it. Nothing was out of place. I took a slow step inside, scanning the space. Then something shifted behind me. I spun around, my pulse hammering in my ears. Nothing. But the air felt different, charged with something unseen. I swallowed hard, backing out of the room. I made it up the stairs in record time, shut my door, and locked it. My hands trembled as I dialed Lisa's number. She didn't answer. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. I sat on my bed, my back pressed against the headboard, staring at the door as if expecting it to burst open at any second. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and I fell into an uneasy sleep. By morning, sunlight streamed through my window, making the night feel like a distant, irrational memory. Almost. I checked my phone. A message from Lisa. Why did you call me at 1 a.m.? I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. Were you home last night? I typed. A few seconds later, the dots appeared, then her reply came through. No. I stayed at Ryan's. Why? I didn't respond. Instead, I walked downstairs, forcing myself to check the space in the daylight. Her room was just as I had left it, but I noticed something that hadn't been there before. A single item had been knocked from the nightstand, a picture frame, lying face down on the floor. I turned it over. It was an old photo of Lisa and me, taken years ago. The glass was cracked right through the middle. I stood there for a long time, gripping the frame, staring at my own reflection in the fractured glass. I told myself I must have imagined everything, that it was just a dream, brought on by watching horror movies before bed. Because the alternative? The alternative was far worse. Story 2. I was 14 the night I realized that fear doesn't just come from dark hallways or the creaks of an old house. True fear is something that presses in on you, making your skin crawl and your breath turn shallow before your mind can even register what's wrong. My mom was a nurse, working long overnight shifts, and my older brother had moved away for college. That left me alone in the house more often than I cared to admit, but I had gotten used to it. Most nights, I'd just stay in my room, play video games, and fall asleep with my earbuds in. That night, Molly was over. We weren't exactly dating, but we spent a lot of time together, watching movies, texting at all hours, dancing around what we really meant to each other. She had to leave around 11, though. Her parents were strict, and she couldn't stay out late. So I was alone. Again, I settled into bed with my phone, mindlessly scrolling, my bedroom window opened just enough to let in the cool air from outside. My room overlooked the backyard, a wooden deck stretching out below, complete with a table and a few chairs. It was a quiet night. No wind, no crickets, just silence. Then I heard it. A scraping sound. Something moving against the wooden deck below my window. I tensed, my thumbs freezing on my phone screen. At first, I thought maybe it was the wind moving a chair. But the air was still. Then another scrape. Slow, deliberate. I leaned over the bed, peering out the window. A person was sitting in one of the deck chairs, staring up at my window. I froze. In the dim glow from the porch light, I could just make out his features. He was older, maybe late 40s or early 50s, with thinning hair and sunken eyes. His head was tilted slightly, like he was studying something interesting. He was smiling. I yanked back from the window so fast I nearly fell off the bed. My heart was hammering, a cold sweat breaking out along my arms. Who the hell was he? My brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was a friend messing with me. But no one I knew would just sit there, staring in silence. I grabbed my phone, opening my group chat. Anyone near my house? I typed. The responses came fast. No. What's up? I didn't answer. Instead, I forced myself to look out the window again. He was still there. Not moving. Not blinking. Just watching. My breath hitched. A new kind of fear crept in. The kind that whispered, "He knows you're alone." I wanted to close the window, to shut the blinds, but something in me hesitated. If I moved too quickly, he'd know I was scared. Instead, I forced my voice to sound steady. "What do you want?" The man's shoulders began to shake. At first, I thought he was crying. Then I realized he was laughing. But it was silent. Just a slow, convulsing shake, like he was laughing so hard he couldn't make a sound. The hairs on my arms stood up. Then, beneath his breath, I heard it. A faint, wheezing whistle. I backed away from the window, my body tense. This isn't normal. This isn't right. I needed to do something. Call someone. But as I reached for my phone, I heard another noise, the back door rattling. He was trying to get in. A bolt of ice shot through my spine. I wasn't alone anymore. I darted out of my room, heart pounding, creeping to the top of the stairs. The front door. I just had to make it to the front door and run. Then the doorknob twisted. He was trying the front door now. A choked noise escaped my throat. I backed away, fast, retreating into my room, locking the door behind me. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. It rang and rang. Then a voice. 911, what's your emergency? There's a man outside my house. I whispered, trying not to sob. He's trying to get in. The operator's voice was calm. Too calm. Can you describe him? I glanced back out the window. He was gone. I swallowed thickly. He was middle-aged, smiling. But he just disappeared. Stay where you are, the operator said. Officers are on the way. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. My body was locked in place, frozen with the kind of fear that seeps into your bones. For minutes, I sat there in silence, waiting for sirens, waiting for anything. Then, just as I started to breathe again, I heard it. A slow creak from inside the house. It was the sound of a footstep, coming from downstairs. I slapped a hand over my mouth, stifling a cry. He was inside. I clutched my phone, feeling every beat of my heart slamming against my ribs. I wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but all I could do was sit there, paralyzed. Then, sirens. A red and blue glow flashed through my window. A pounding on the front door. Police. The heavy thudding of boots on the porch, then voices shouting. I stayed locked in my room, barely breathing, until an officer called up the stairs. "You can come out now." When I finally emerged, I saw them, 2 cops standing by the open front door. The back door had been forced open, the lock snapped clean off. But there was no sign of him. "Did you get him?" I asked, voice shaking. One officer shook his head. "No one was here when we arrived." I stared at them, feeling like I was losing my mind. "He was inside. I heard him." They exchanged a look. "We'll do a sweep of the property," one of them assured me. They searched the house, the backyard, even the woods behind the fence. Nothing. But I knew what I had heard. Before they left, one of the officers turned to me. "If you hear or see anything else, call us immediately." I nodded, but my skin was still cold with lingering dread. Because I knew. That man? He wasn't done with me. And somewhere, out there in the dark, he was still watching. Story 3. It was an ordinary Friday night, but for some reason, I had a feeling that something would go wrong. My parents had left for the weekend, a rare trip away to a friend's cabin, and I was left behind. I had gotten used to being alone in the house. At 22, I thought I had learned how to take care of myself, how to enjoy the solitude without fear. My brother, Sean, had gone to stay with a friend for the weekend, leaving me with the entire house to myself. I could do whatever I wanted, watch movies, snack, stay up late. I didn't mind the quiet. The house was in the woods, isolated from the nearest neighbor by several miles. The only sound you could hear was the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional owl or coyote in the distance. The place always felt more alive when my parents were home, but tonight, it felt oddly empty. I spent the evening in my room, playing video games and texting my friends. Around midnight, I decided to go outside for a breath of fresh air. I stepped onto the back porch, the cold air biting at my skin. The stars were clearer than I had ever seen them, shining bright in the sky above. I leaned on the railing and lit a cigarette, staring out at the dark forest. For a while, nothing happened. Then, I heard it. A low whistle. At first, I thought it was just the wind playing tricks. But it came again. A long, drawn-out whistle. I froze, cigarette in hand, staring into the woods. At first, I told myself it was an animal. Maybe a deer, or even one of the coyotes that roamed the area. But it didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard before. The whistle was too deliberate. I turned around, almost instinctively, expecting to see someone standing in the yard, but the area was empty. The lights from the house illuminated the grass and the trees, casting long shadows that seemed to shift with every gust of wind. I stood still for a moment, trying to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. Then I heard it again, closer this time. The whistle was softer, but it was unmistakable. It wasn't the wind. My stomach churned. I threw my cigarette on the ground and stomped it out. My heart raced as I stepped off the porch and into the yard. The night air was suddenly cold and biting. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching me. I glanced around. Nothing. But then I heard movement in the woods. Something shuffling just out of view. I froze. I couldn't move. The only sound was the rustling of leaves. Then, a voice, low and gravelly, coming from the direction of the woods. "Help, over here." It was a man's voice. Deep, almost too deep. The words didn't make sense. Why would someone need help out there in the woods, so far away from the house? I felt my legs tremble beneath me as I backed up slowly. The voice called again. "Help, over here. Please, come closer." The voice had an edge to it now. It wasn't just a plea, it was demanding, desperate. My instinct was to run inside and lock the doors, but my feet wouldn't move. I couldn't look away from the dark, silent woods. The air was still, the trees casting sharp shadows under the moonlight. I strained my ears, trying to pinpoint the sound. But the voice, it was gone. For a split second, I thought maybe I had imagined it, but then I heard something else, a snap. The unmistakable sound of a branch breaking. I whipped around, heart in my throat. A figure was standing at the edge of the yard. A man. I couldn't make out his face, but he was tall and thin, his posture unnaturally straight. He was standing perfectly still, watching me. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The figure didn't speak, but I could feel the weight of his gaze. I took a step back. Another step. Then I ran. I bolted for the house, slamming the door behind me. My breath came in ragged gasps as I locked the door and hurried to the windows, closing the blinds as quickly as I could. I didn't dare look outside again, not even to check if he was still there. I tried calling my parents, but the signal was spotty. The call didn't go through. I stayed in my room, pacing, listening to the wind outside and my heart thundering in my chest. Every time I heard a creak from the floorboards, I tensed. Every time I heard the wind rustle the trees, I imagined the man outside, watching, waiting for me to make a mistake. Around 3 a.m., I finally felt myself drifting off to sleep, exhaustion weighing heavily on me. But just as I started to fall into a restless slumber, I heard it again, the whistle. It was louder this time, coming from inside the house. I shot up in bed, heart racing. My mind scrambled to process the sound. Had I really heard it? Then it came again, a long, drawn-out whistle echoing down the hallway. I grabbed my phone, dialing 911 without thinking. The call went straight to voicemail. I was alone. I could hear the faint shuffle of footsteps, slow and deliberate, just outside my door. They stopped for a moment, as if waiting for something. My breath hitched in my throat. I was paralyzed, unable to move or even make a sound. Suddenly, the door handle turned. I heard the click of the lock, the soft rattle of the knob. The door slowly creaked open. I didn't dare look. I kept my eyes fixed on the dark corner of the room, willing myself to disappear. The footsteps grew closer. I could feel him. He was in the room now. The temperature dropped. Then, the voice whispered, right next to my ear. "I told you to help." I froze, unable to move, unable to scream. I waited. Minutes passed, but I didn't dare open my eyes. I was trapped, caught in the dark, waiting for whatever would happen next. Finally, I heard the footsteps retreating, fading into the distance. The door swung closed, and the house fell silent. I didn't sleep that night, and I didn't leave the house until my parents came back. When I finally managed to tell them what happened, they dismissed it as a nightmare, a product of my imagination. But I knew better. I still hear that whistle sometimes, in the back of my mind, a reminder that he's out there, waiting.